Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? I've just been handed an urgent and horrifying news story, and I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.
Hey everybody, this is Bill Manning. This is Studio C41. We are back. It is a bit of a light evening tonight. Kevin is on set once again, and Michael is still super busy processing film. So it is just Steven and me, and we have a special guest here. I'm so excited to introduce her. We have Mary Margaret Cornwell. How are you doing?
Hi, everybody. I'm good. How are you guys?
Doing great. So how was your drive all the way down from Cartersville?
It was wonderful. You know, one of my goals in life is just to fall in love with Atlanta traffic. It's like my favorite thing in the world.
There's plenty of it for you to fall in love with.
I mean, I lived in Boston for 2 years, and people don't know how to drive really well up there, and it's still traffic. It's still worse down here.
Yeah, it's not getting any better
and
either.
The roads are wider.
You know, I mean, hey, that's because nobody needs a public transit system that actually works.
Oh no, we're not. It's not this kind of podcast. We're not going down there. We're not getting into the Atlanta politics because everybody's got an opinion about that. So anyway, Steven, man, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing pretty well. I'd be even better if I could take a train home. Sorry, Bill,
I don't think they have a train that goes into Smyrna, so I think you're going to be pretty having a hard time.
No, they don't. I could digress about this. I have actually taken public transit from my house all the way to Dunwoody before and back.
Oh my God, God bless you.
It's stupid, but you know, I've done it just for the actual experience of it. If you ever want to really know where you live, take the bus. Like, seriously, take the bus or walk, and you will have a greater understanding and a better appreciation for the fact that there's only one bus route that runs once an hour on a main thoroughfare. And if you miss it, you are late for everything. So
tell me how you really feel. Anyway,
but yeah, man, I'm doing well.
Awesome, man. Well, I'm glad to hear. So the last 3 episodes that we did, we had KEH on the show, and it was an awesome series. It was super, super technical, but I want to break from all that technical talk because I absolutely love it, but I also really want to dive into some art. Mary Margaret is a curator at the Booth Museum of Western Art, and there are some great exhibitions over there that we're going to be talking about tonight. And it's a nice break from all the technical talk. I mean, you and I, we had dinner about this, and you said, look, I'm not a technical person or any of that stuff. I know ISO and all that stuff, but I don't get into like, oh, was this shot on a 35 millimeter or medium format and all that. And I don't want to get into that, any talk whatsoever.
Like as photographers, especially, I think sometimes even in the film community, I mean, it just goes back and forth, but yeah, we get so obsessed with all of those things and actually don't spend any time looking just at images.
Exactly.
Like appreciating the art form for what photography is, what it actually means to see a picture that moves you. Or even just looking at our own images. I'm guilty of that too, even not spending enough time with the pictures I've made, actually looking at them from a critical view, or, you know, why does this interest me? The things that I actually picked up in art school that I do forget about doing often. So yeah, I completely agree with you. We need to stop worrying about what it actually was that made that picture, but why that picture means something to you looking at it.
Right. And I've been getting so fed up with there was an article that came up on Petapixel about can you tell the difference between a crop sensor and a full frame sensor? And I lost it. Like, I literally could not take it. I was like, the differences are so minute and the technology has gotten so good that it really doesn't matter at this point anymore. It's like, stop talking about it.
Dude, if I see one more article that's about like, which is better, film or digital?
I know, exactly. So I'm just like, all right, you know what? I am so thankful that Mary Margaret, you've agreed to come down to the show and talk about art and talk about artists that have made an impact on the art industry. And I'm so excited to talk about it. So let's talk about the Booth Museum. What is the Booth Museum? We obviously said that it was Western art, but let's talk a little bit more about, you know, how did the Booth Museum get started?
So back in the early 2000s, our benefactor, who prefers to remain anonymous, had this collection of Western art. And he actually had sold a previous business. And instead of letting everybody go at that previous business, he was like, I'm going to bring a lot of you on, and we're going to open this museum. And we're going to bring in some people to do some of the curating side and some of the more curatorial sides of things, where you do need that master's background, but some of the business side, still running a business on both. So he opened this Western Art Museum with his private collection, and he actually named it after his mentor, Mr. Booth.
I was wondering where that
So
came
that's where it is. Mr. Booth does not own the Booth Museum. He has since passed away. So when you actually walk into our building, there's a portrait of him on the left side. So there's a giant circle desk. Mm-hmm. The portrait of him is to the left. So that's kind of how we got started, and we've since grown our collection exponentially. And back in December, that's when they decided, hey, we're going to seriously start collecting photography as a fine art medium. So that's something we're really interested in. In the beginning, it was mostly paintings and sculptures.
And that's so refreshing to hear because digital photography, a lot of photography, Ansel Adams fought so hard to make photography a fine art. So it's really great to hear that the Booth Museum is actually pushing that, and then we were talking, you said that the Booth Museum is also focusing on living artists as well. So tell me a little bit about that. I mean, what's the focus on that?
So we do have what I like to call, your standards. So we have your Maynard Dixons, your Remingtons, and then in the photography world, your Ansel Adams, the people that draw everybody in. But we do have a very large collection of artist creative work by living artists. So painting, sculpture, photography by living artists. And the reason we do that is because there's something about having those artists come back and come into the museum and give a lecture on their art, or teach a class on their art, or even just teach a specific style of art, things like that. Today, we actually had an art for lunch with Denise Mulkey, who came in to talk about soft pastel paintings.
Oh, very cool.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it was a really cool art for lunch. And, she's actually going to be teaching a class tomorrow and throughout the weekend. And so we do have those sort of classes where people can learn from the artists themselves. And it's like I was telling Bill earlier tonight, it's different than reading about what somebody, said the artist thought, or even what the artist said they thought, or somebody who was like, oh, I was standing next to them when this happened, versus the artist being like, this is exactly what I felt. This is exactly what I saw. And, you're hearing that through word of mouth. So it's just something really kind of different that a lot of, museums don't necessarily focus on, but it's something that we're really adamant about, is that, about 60% of our collection is primarily by living artists.
That's fantastic. I remember just even like going through art school, and like it was, I would say demoralizing, but somewhat, for like trying to, think about like, do I want to be a fine artist? Do I want to try to approach this? Am I ever going to get into anything that's not just this pop-up gallery in the shopping center? Is that ever going to be anything that's,
right?
Even if I am, I'm going to have to wait until I die to actually like see something exhibited somewhere.
Right.
So that's fantastic. I mean, I know that's huge for working living artists to actually have people appreciating them now.
So the Booth Museum is not, some small museum. You guys are actually named as an affiliate of the Smithsonian Institute in 2006?
Yes. So we're actually so in size, literally, we're the second largest museum in the state of Georgia. So what's really funny is people come up and they think we're an old house museum, one that's like in some antebellum style house, and they walk in and they're like, oh, like, yeah, you can't see this in an hour. No, it's probably going to take a day to really appreciate everything that we have.
Absolutely.
And then, yes, we are an affiliate of the Smithsonian. No, we don't have any Night at the Museum moments, because I have been asked that by some adults, mostly children, but some adults have also asked me that. Our artifact collection does not come to life at night. Our sculptures don't. It's kind of sad, but
No tomb of Amun-Ra.
Yeah, no Native American stones that bring the artwork to life or items. But
I can't believe that's actually a serious question.
I've actually had a young child also ask me why the phone in a photograph had a cord.
Wow.
Yeah, so there's a lot of fun questions you get asked
awesome.
that don't necessarily pertain to, they do pertain to the art, but they're not questions you would normally expect to get asked. So.
Well, it's really cool that, I mean, you guys got an amazing list here of accolades. And what I was really impressed to see that, you know, you guys have Telus Museum. You also have the Bartow County Museum as well, the History Museum there. And through the county, you guys were actually voted the best one. And that's amazing because, I mean, not to put down Telus or anything like that, but, I mean, Telus is an impressive science museum. And to see you guys voted the best in all of Bartow County, that is really impressive.
And for anybody who's, you know, not in the Atlanta area listening to this, Cartersville is... what
45 minutes north of Atlanta.
About 45 minutes, you know, or
well,
so.
without traffic. Yeah. So an hour. Hour 15.
Northwest, it's not a it's a cool town, but it's not like a major crossroads. It's not like, you know, somewhere that you would generally you're going out of your way to get to Cartersville. So for anybody who's going to the Booth Museum from outside of the county, you know, that's kind of your destination. But like I think you were speaking a little bit about the fact that like people who live there voted it their favorite museum.
Yeah, that was really important to us that, you know, the members of our community also, you know, feel like we're as amazing as we think we are. You know, we think we're awesome and we're glad that they do as well. And I think that also has a lot to do with our education department and our programming department. They do a lot of outreach. There are a lot of summer camps and things. And, you know, adults tend to forget things that are there, but when your child runs up to you, you're like, I want to go to the, you know, the Cowboy Museum. I want to go to the Booth Museum. We're not just a cowboy museum, but when you're 6, you remember the cowboys, you remember the horses. I think that's really important in the fact that they've reached that younger generation to get them more active and wanting somebody to bring them back in. I think really helps. And, you know, this summer we've had outstanding numbers of just, you know, all ages coming in and seeing the booth. So that's something we're really proud of.
And there are also other things that kind of really trickle down into that is that you have such an amazing attraction that it also helps the Cartersville and the Bartow County economy. I mean, you know, my wife and I mean, we just went there and had, you know, lunch right afterwards and everything. So, I mean, that's money that's going into that community. It's helping everybody that's, you know, just located around there. And downtown Cartersville is actually a beautiful town. I'm coming from Ball Ground, where it's like that small rinky-dink, you know, town and everything. But Cartersville has really grown, and
they've put a lot of, you know, restoring the downtown and everything too. So very cool. But 5 out of the last 6 times I've been to Cartersville, I've been to come to the Booth Museum, and it's just been like, you know, going to other things at the same time. So
yeah, one of we'll get into it in a little bit, but you know, every single time that you guys put on a new exhibition, like I'm like so excited. Like the ones that we're going to be talking about here, I'm so excited, and you know, we've talked about it back and forth nonstop. So, but before we get into that, so Mary Margaret, tell us a little bit about yourself. So, like, you know, tell us a little bit about your background. How did you become a curator in Cartersville?
So I'm from a tiny little town in Northwest Georgia called Adairsville.
Where is that? No, I'm kidding.
Adairsville. I like to say it's the halfway point between Atlanta and Chattanooga on 75. So that's a good way to figure out where it is. And graduated from high school there, and I continued on to the University of Georgia, where I received my bachelor's in history and art history. So early American history and early American art history. So
cool.
Basically pre-Civil War.
Okay.
Wow.
So up until the creation of photography was kind of where my mind went with that. And I got into Simmons College, which is a top 10 library science program for the United States. And my background is I have a master's in library and information science with a focus in preservation and photography. Awesome. So I have a little bit different of a background than most curators. A lot of curators practice kind of what they preach is how I say it. You know, a lot of the photography curators were photographers and have stepped into that. I like to preserve it. So I think of things a little bit differently than some of my counterparts that hopefully you will have on your show very soon.
Hopefully.
Gosh,
she's so busy though.
So how do you mean by that? As far as like you see things differently than they do?
So when I look at a photograph, the first thing I think about is, okay, how am I going to frame it so it doesn't get damaged? What type of paper is it printed on? What type of photograph is it? Is it digital? Is it an albumin print? Is it on salted paper? Is it platinum? I don't really have daguerreotypes, so I don't go back to daguerreotypes, tintypes, things like that. If you want to see those, go to Bartow History Museum. They have those for you guys to look at, but not really at the booth.
They're generally pretty wee, so you know you're not gonna.
Kind of tiny, kind of hard to light, you know, those reflections. So, and lighting, I'm very particular on how much light can go on a piece of work.
The type of glass on it.
The type of glass. You know. I actually prefer UV resistant plexi or UV filter plexi. It's lighter. And if for some reason it comes off the wall, gets bumped, gets knocked, it's not going to break and shatter and actually damage. It might crack or scratch, but it's not going to shatter. So
and it's going to be just as archival as like museum glass.
Yes. I honestly don't know very museums that use museum glass.
Really? It's just a nice like selling point at a frame shop to say that this is the museum glass.
It is.
Damn you, Hobby Lobby. You got me good.
It does work. I will say it does work. It does, you know, reduce glare, but I prefer UV, you know, the plexi that does filter UV. It's lighter. Don't have to worry about it as much, especially with traveling exhibits. If you think about it, you don't usually travel your photography in your house.
Sure, yeah.
So that's just something else to think about. And I always like to point out that, you know, when you walk into one of my galleries, it's going to be darker than most of the rest of the museum.
Why is that?
Light can seriously damage photographs. It can actually cause it to fade rather quickly. It can cause it to it can reactivate things sometimes if it's not properly washed. You know, bugs kind of also like light. If you think about it, kind of draws them in. They love photographs. Photographs are their favorite things, probably in a museum.
Really?
All that tasty chemicals on the paper. So they're going to be, we mostly use foot candles. Some use lux. We use foot candles. So ours are probably about half the foot candle wattage that you're going to see in a lot of other places. Okay. And that's just because we want to keep them from fading, from anything happening to them. So I have people who are used to things hanging in a gallery and they're like, oh, why isn't this as bright as I saw it? You know, I see things in galleries. And I'm like, because they want to sell you this beautiful picture and they want it to look the best it can. And I want it to survive forever.
Yeah.
So that's kind of, you know, there are those moments where people are like, are you sure we can't make it brighter? And I'm like, yeah, no, it's gotta stay this. It's got to stay this low. I'm sorry. I know you want it brighter, but we just can't. So
that's cool. So out of curiosity, because I know nothing about the role of a curator and all that stuff, like, so obviously the goal is to get people to come in and see the museum and see and appreciate the work and everything. Is there something that you're trying to, not so much a message or anything, but trying to convey like a theme to the viewer, or like, do you want them to walk away like, wow, that was something I never knew about that particular artist or anything along those lines? Like, what's the goal, you know, trying to build that experience?
Well, mostly a lot of people perceive us as, again, the Cowboy Museum, and that's not necessarily something that we are. It's just, that's what Western art people automatically assume we're a cowboy museum, and we're much more than that. And so I'm very lucky in that my gallery is called Picturing America. That's actually the name of the photography gallery.
Oh, cool.
So that allows me to kind of branch out, and it kind of helps that perception that it's the Booth Museum. You know, yes, we have Western art, but you know, there are several other parts of the American kind of collective memory that we do want to put out there and show. So I know we'll dive into Ansel Adams a little bit later, but we do have some of his work from New York and from like Cape Cod that, you know, you wouldn't necessarily have seen if we were just like strictly Western.
That portrait of Alfred Stieglitz, for instance.
Yeah. Which was taken in New York. So, you know, if we were strictly Western, that necessarily wouldn't. Yes, he is a Western photographer, but if we strictly had to show just Western themes, then you wouldn't have been able to see that. So,
and I was really surprised that he did commercial work too. Like not so many people knew about that. And if I remember correctly, reading about it, he was not in his zone, I guess. When zone, look at me, is an Ansel Adams pun? And I didn't even notice. Anyway, again, that's my poor dry humor. But anyway, that he wasn't really in his element when he was doing commercial work, from what I gathered on the like the videos and stuff like that.
I mean, have you read his autobiography? Because you should.
Begrudgingly, I say no.
Oh, dude, it's a really, really quick read too. I mean, it's just like everything you want him to be.
Is it because it's mostly pictures?
No, not at all. It's like, but the memory on that guy is just outstanding. I mean, just the way he could like vividly. It should be. It's like you're reading a bunch of pictures, basically, from like how eloquently he's describing events of his life and things going on and how much detail there is. But he talks about his commercial work in there. And actually you see some images from it. There's like one where it's like, I think there's welding going on, if I can remember one image I saw, and it's beautiful. If you look at it and it's an Ansel Adams image, but it just happens to be of somebody like plying a trade that he shot commercially. Right. And he did these images for Kodak too.
Oh, cool.
The colorama images, they called them, when they first introduced color Kodachrome. And there were these giant prints that were like in Grand Central Station, and he did one of them for them. Wow. So there's a lot of like, as Ansel Adams nerd, but a lot of stuff as far as like that commercial side of things that he was very prolific on, even though he might not have, he didn't have the same kind of, I say like emotional, spiritual connection to it as he did as the Sierra Nevada mountains, as the landscape, but he did approach it from the same very thought out, very pre-visualized technical approach that he did from the rest of his work.
That's cool. Well, I don't want to spoil so much about Ansel Adams, because we're going to be moving to that segment, because this is Mary Margaret.
I want to talk about Ansel Adams now.
Hey, it's okay. I completely understand.
So let me ask you this, Mary Margaret. I'm kind of curious, because like, how do you guys come up with the idea? Like, I want to do this exhibition. Well, I guess I'll go ahead and, like, for example, Zoë Urness. We're going to talk about her here in a second. So, like, how did you come up with this idea? Like, I want to do her work.
So people a lot of times think that I come up with everything all on my own and nobody else gets to have a say. I'm open to suggestions. I've had coworkers say, "Hey, I heard about this person. You should check them out." I've had my director come in and it was like, "Oh, I was out in Colorado and I met this person, this person, and this person. Go check them out. See if we want to bring anybody in." Okay. And that's actually how I found out about Zoë Urness. He's like, he kind of passed her name along to me. He's like, "Go check her out. See if, that's something we want to bring in." And, I looked at 2 of her images and called him up on the phone and was like, "Yep, I'm done. I've only seen 2 images. I'm good. Like, we need to bring her.
Wow.
We need to bring her out here." And I don't want to spoil it, but one of them was the December 5th image from Standing Rock. And so it's a powerful color image. And I saw that and was like, "Yep, nope, I'm good." And the fact that, she's a Native American, a woman, and 33 years old is just amazing to me, that she has already this just kind of, not necessarily movement, but her works tell such a great story. And there is a story behind all of them, and they're amazing photographs in themselves, but the stories behind them lend so much more to them that I was like, no, I have to have her.
That's awesome.
So
very cool. So I'm really impressed that, again, her age, 33 years old. She's our age, dude.
I just turned 33, so I know. That's weird.
And
people are doing things.
Using it, that's amazing. And kudos to her, because I mean, she's to get into such a prestigious museum already. That's just.
She also just opened a gallery as well, and
wow,
yeah. So she has her own gallery, and she makes me
So is she? Are you just? I know we're stealing thunder from later on, but it's is this going to be just a touring exhibit, or is anything going to be coming into like permanent collection, or?
hopefully some items will be staying with me if I have my way.
So-
I will at least get one. That's my goal. But
I know the permanent photography collection is relatively new, but I'd love to hear kind of more about like the process of that, how actually you guys go about, or you're going about like acquiring pieces, what you're wanting to actually see a part of basically the legacy of this museum when it comes to photography.
so there's kind of three parts to collecting any sort of work. So we do have, we've contacted several different photography galleries and been like, what do you have? Like, kind of tell us what you have, show us what, you have in stock, and give us kind of a mock-up of that. And, there's a review process for that, and committees meet and discuss, and eventually, things get paid for or bought for the museum. But that's a very small portion of what we actually have in our collection. So most of our collection actually comes through either donations from collectors and different galleries. So we actually have an Edward Curtis photogravure that was donated to us earlier this year by a gallery. So we're very excited about that one. I'm actually going to pick up 3 more Edward Curtis photographs next Thursday that are donated by a patron. She's just downsizing and wants them to go to a good home. So that's actually a lot of it too. People are like, okay, my family doesn't want these, but I don't want them to. A lot of them are like, A, I don't want them to sell them, or B, I don't want them to go someplace where they're going to get destroyed. So will you take them?
That's amazing.
And, very rarely, I don't think I've actually ever turned down a donation. I think the one time I did, it was something that was just not within our realm of collection. It was just something a little too out of the realm of what we do. Because I have had some people offered to donate some Africa prints. And I'm like, okay, not necessarily what we do, but, thank you for the consideration kind of thing. And then lastly, we have artists who also donate their own work.
Oh, cool.
So they're either, friends of ours, friends of patrons and things like that who come in and they're like, hey, I want to give you this photograph. And we're like, great, thank you. And one of those is Jay Dussard, who is a prolific he again is known as a cowboy photographer, because that's what he's most famous for, but his abstracts and his landscapes are also just quite beautiful. He's in his 80s and he's still shooting, and he recently just switched from black and white to color because he's like, I just wanted to try something new. And he's in his 80s and he was like, he's like, let's do it. He is donating his entire archives and collection to me.
Are you serious?
So next year I will have his retrospective and I get to keep everything that comes.
My gosh.
So
That's fantastic.
So that's 60 plus pieces that will probably be donated into our permanent collection. That very much fits and embodies what we do at the booth. So that collection is very much. And he's actually really good friends with Laura Wilson. We'll talk about later. He sent me a picture of Laura Wilson on horseback. So he's on horseback taking a picture of Laura Wilson on horseback, taking a picture of a rancher in Texas. So it's like one of those like very meta photographs of just like of all of this happening, but it's a great shot. And I asked him, I was like, can I use this, on the website? And he's like, yeah, sure, fine. But you might want to check with Laura. So, but yeah, no, he's amazing. So
that's awesome.
He's great.
Well, you're definitely doing an awesome job because
thank you.
I've talked about it on the show, and I've even told the guys I want to bring in guests to the show that I've been personally impacted by. We had KEH on here where I've purchased gear from KEH and everything. We did not pay them. They didn't pay us to be on the show or anything like that. Same thing here. The booth has not paid us whatsoever. This is something where I went to the Jacques Loeb and the Ansel Adams exhibits, and I was like, wow, this was awesome. And then I read about how you guys were increasing the focus on photography, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is absolutely awesome. And I was like, okay, I sent out I was talking to one of the curators or one of the ushers in the exhibits. I was like, can I talk to, is there a way I can email the curator? I really want them to be on the show so we can talk about this. And he's like, yeah, hold on a second. And he went and grabbed your card and it's like, shoot her an email. I was like, okay, well, here's a shot in the dark. Maybe the reply, I don't know, you know? And I did the same thing for when I saw Richard Avedon at the High and everything. So, Greg, we're talking to you. If you're listening to this, please reply to me. So, no, I'm kidding. So I am, tidbit, I am talking to the High Museum. Hopefully we can get them onto the show as well. But anyway, you replied to my email and I went, holy crap. They actually replied. And so
Did you secretly think I was like 55?
No, honestly,
Okay.
I had no idea what to expect.
People like see my name and they like automatically assume that I'm like old because I have such an old timey name. So then I like walk up and they're like, oh, she's not old. Okay.
That's got to work in your favor, though.
Yeah, it's kind of fun. It is fun. I've been asked if I'm an intern a couple of times.
Oh.
So, and I'm like, no, I'm the curator here. And they're like, oh, good for you. I'm like, thanks. And I just kind of smile and walk off. Most people, I guess, just assume I'm in college. So,
Yeah, no, honestly, I didn't think I was going to get the reply, to be honest with you. But I mean, we talked back and forth, and I think you kind of felt how passionate I was about, how impactful this was for me, and what really made this most impactful for me was the visit for Jacques Loeb, because I try to learn about the photographer ahead of time and everything like that, and I did not realize that all of his work was destroyed on September 11th because it was kept in a vault in the World Trade Center, and the only way to recover his work were from the contact sheets that were left over at, was it the White House or the Smithsonian or something?
he actually had those at his studio. So they were in family possession. And, I'm not 100% sure if all of them were in family possession. I'm sure some of them were, throughout collections in different places. And they took the contact sheets, and they also took photographs that were in family friends' houses, in families' houses, and they took the actual photographs and kind of remastered them from those. One fun fact that I like to tell everybody is, anybody know a museum that has a disaster plan for if a plane were to strike it?
No.
It's the JFK Library. So if the prints have been donated to the JFK Library, they probably would have been here. So if you had actually donated the negatives to them and have them housed there, then it's in Boston. It's right in the path of Logan Airport. So that's why they have that. So I tell people it's a little weird that that they weren't at the JFK.
Yeah.
But oh well.
Yeah, I mean, that experience was just, I learned so much from it, and I had never walked from an exhibition where I was going, wow, I went in knowing something and got way more than I expected. And the same thing with Ansel Adams. When I was first getting into film, I started looking at Ansel Adams's work through books and through the website and everything. And when I was at Yosemite, yeah, sure, I saw the Ansel Adams gallery there and saw, all the pictures that he had, original prints that were up there. I was like, oh, that's awesome, because you only get to see, whatever was up for sale on consignment up there. But when I went to the Booth Museum, I was just like, oh my gosh. Like, my wife was like, all right, it's time to go now. You've been here for like 3 hours looking at the same picture for like an hour. It's time to go. And I'm like, oh, okay. So unfortunately, my wife does not share the same passion as me for photography. So, but she does make a great camera bag caddy. So I can thank her for that. So.
Well, that's nice of you, though.
Every woman's dream.
Right? Yeah. I mean, that's, hopefully she listens to this and will feel very, very flattered by.
Well, it's okay, because my coworker, her husband is her camera caddy. So I guess it's a mutual thing. And just like, the spouse is like, your job role is now the camera caddy. So,
yeah, I dated a photographer, and I remember we had gone out after a shoot, and we were in a bar in Athens, and he's like, "You're going to sit in this chair, you're going to hold this camera, you're not going to move, you're not going to let anybody like bump into you." And I'm like, "Okay."
And that's when the relationship was over.
Sadly, it took a little bit longer, but no, I was just like, "I think you love your camera more than me." Got it. Okay.
Oh, geez. So So Stephen, tell me about you've been to the booth, man.
Good grief, yes. I mean, to be totally honest, I had no idea that the Booth Museum even existed prior to the 2010 Ansel Adams exhibit, which probably was a time that a lot of people learned about the Booth Museum.
Yes.
It was the fact that there was actually a touring exhibit of Ansel Adams prints. I mean, that hands down, like anybody's listened before, you've probably heard me, even just earlier in this episode, nerd out about it and wax poetic about Ansel Adams and how much he's actually been an influence for me. But the fact of, that's what felt like a once in a lifetime opportunity to go and see that collection of work was just huge. I mean, and so, I think that first exhibit, my wife and I went to at least 4 times in the in the span of the months that I was there, and it was just fantastic. I mean, it was one of the largest collections of photography I'd seen anywhere, like just outside of like you mean his work, but just the fact that there were the 2 main galleries at the museum were dedicated to a photographer, and like coming through art school and still feeling that like in a lot of ways photography was the deep dark secret of the art world or something, that it was like, it was still fighting even in the 2000s to be accepted as an art form by a lot of museums and galleries. But actually seeing that was a huge inspiration for me, because I was still it was actually that summer I was finishing up my photography degree, so it was a really just inspiring. But just the fact of that exhibition of prints that you guys got in there, the whole show of, there was a mock-up of Ansel Adams' darkroom, just video footage about him using it. I mean, it was just getting lost in that exhibit. I just wandered in there for hours. Unfortunately, my wife is an artist, and she very much appreciates going to museums and checking things out as well. So I'm very, very lucky at that she does photographs, second shoots weddings with me, but she also paints and draws. And so we'll actually trade off carrying each other's gear and things. And like, I'll be watching her stuff and then go back and forth. It really is. So it's, I never have to feel bad about going to the museum with her. It's always great. I'll spend hours. Last time actually at the most recent Ansel Adams exhibit, we actually just sat and she was just drawing and sketching one of his prints. While I was staring at each one for minutes. So, cool. So she was just sitting in the middle of that little exhibition space. So it was great. But anyway, I'm rambling now. But just getting and coming to the museum, we did not know what to expect, other than there was this. If it had been one Ansel Adams print, I think I would have gone. At that point, I'd never seen any of his work in person. And I think I still would. If you guys had one Ansel Adams picture next year, I'd come specifically for that. Just because getting to see his work in person, printed by him, the real silver gelatin prints. I mean, it's just nothing else does it justice.
I framed all of the ones for this exhibit, so I've actually held them. I'm framed.
I'm gonna have to shake your hand again, a couple of times.
Which I tell people, I'm like, if I didn't have to put plexi in front of these, there's so much
there's so much richness.
Yeah,
to it.
they're
incredible.
Just amazing, and it's my hands are slightly shaking as I'm moving the image into the frame. So yeah, that's my kind of tidbit. I'm like, oh no, I actually framed Moonrise over Hernandez.
You're officially the coolest person I've ever met.
Yeah,
with gloves.
Stephen now.
Yeah, of course.
With gloves. Just gonna preface, I was not barehanded. I was wearing gloves.
I would expect nothing less. But so yeah, but we were totally surprised by the museum in general, actually coming to it. Just the quality of the permanent collection, the way that the museum is laid out. It's so incredibly inviting. And it's so bright. Even you talked about exhibit spaces, turning down the lights, but the museum as a whole, there's a ton of natural light. There's a very good flow to it. And you don't know what to expect. Like you said, it's a cowboy museum, Western art. What does that actually entail? But there is so much that we actually appreciated, just the quality, the scale of the work in there. Some of those paintings are just phenomenal. But then, just getting to go back multiple times to see now, this has been the 3rd Ansel Adams exhibit that has come to the museum in less than 10 years, which is just astounding to me. I mean, most people, I think, without going out of their way, wouldn't get to see the chance to see Ansel Adams exhibits, within an hour from their home. I mean, that's just, I think we don't take advantage of that being here, that we have a museum who's bringing things like that to us. And it's so close. So if anybody's listening, go see this last exhibit here again before it closes on November 5th.
Yes. And the booth has been so kind to actually extend it to November 5th.
For sure.
That just goes to show how successful this exhibition is, because, I mean, this is the third time. I mean, I guess you really don't hear museums like rerunning the same artist over and over again.
And everyone has been slightly different too, which has been great. And that first collection, there were images I'd never even seen printed in books of his. And that was just so cool. But then it made me think of it when you were talking about the living artists. The Ansel Adams before and after exhibit was fantastic. Just even seeing contemporaries of his from the, Group F64, like Paul Strand, Edward Stieglitz, Imogen Cunningham, seeing their work alongside with his, Edward Weston, Brett Weston, everybody, along with it. But to see the photographers afterwards who have been influenced too, and the images that they picked that actually influenced them, and just the way it was all laid out was fantastic. And being somebody who, I love photographing landscape images, being so influenced by Ansel Adams, I could see myself in that exhibit too. So that was just something that I really, really appreciated getting a chance to look at.
Yeah, and I just want to also throw out that this exhibition literally would not be possible if it wasn't for Ansel's granddaughter, Virginia Adams Mayhew.
This is what hangs in her house.
Okay.
So the four that are
That's insane.
So the four that were in, the four that were in different frames.
Yeah.
So those are the ones that hang in her house. So that's going to be Tetons and Snake River, Winter Sunrise, which is the very large, the largest piece we have on the what I call a wow wall when you walk directly in, with the horse that's highlighted kind of in the foreground. Steam Beds, which is to the left of that when you're looking at the wow wall. And yes, I'm slowly going through all of them in my head. And there is one other that is escaping me at this moment because it was actually in three are in different frames. One of them was in a silver frame, and so I switched it to a black frame to kind of match everything that we have up. And she sadly is taking back Tetons and Snake River. She misses it. It's going back to her house because the exhibit's actually traveling. Hopefully very soon it will be traveling to some museums around Georgia and hopefully around the United States.
Awesome.
We have some interested parties. Nothing's quite confirmed yet, but she's taking back that one, but she's giving me 8 more. So I kind of, it's kind of okay, I'm going to take this, but I'm going to give you something because I know I'm basically taking the one that's in every photography book ever. Let's explain the zone system. Here's Teton and Snake River. Let's go from there.
Yeah.
So, she realizes that it is, but again, they're her personal
it's her
images that were printed for her. He basically printed all of these. They're called a museum set. So they were basically for museums to buy. But then he was like, "Oh, I'm going to give them to my children and grandchildren so that they can make some money off of them." That's he was like, "I'm going to help them make money." Is basically what his mind was. This is their inheritance.
Yeah.
So she's giving me 8 more.
When is that switch happening?
After. So it will not happen until after.
After the current exhibit.
After the current exhibit. So nobody has to worry about Tetons and Snake River disappearing from the Booth Museum anytime soon. It'll be up through November 5th. But I'm very excited to see what I'm getting in return.
Yeah.
So I'm very excited about that.
So as far as you say you're getting, is this an exhibit that's going to be coming back to the booth at some point, or are you going to be is it you being the one who gets to tour this exhibit? So
it's mostly us being the ones who get to tour it. Virginia really wants people to see it. But again, she lives a very busy life, and museums and museum curating isn't what she does for a living.
Sure. Yeah.
And so we've happily volunteered our services to kind of help her out with this. And so we're gonna be the kind of sponsoring institution that helps tour this. Hopefully very soon. Like I said, nothing's concrete yet. If I had the next stop for it, then I would definitely be passing that along.
Right.
But as soon as I know, I'll let you guys know.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
So yeah, just helping her out. And she's helping us out in a way because we get to see these images with such a great kind of background, which, patrons are great, but I literally had somebody tell me that was not Ansel Adams' signature on them, that it was fake. And I just kind of smiled because I'm like, they came from his granddaughter's house. So I'm just going to assume that she's giving me real things. Like,
Right.
just going to assume. And the fact that, the Ansel Adams Foundation is the one that kind of controls a lot of it too. They're telling me they're real. So I'm just going to go with them.
Yeah.
But thank you for informing me of that.
So let me ask you this. Do you have a favorite piece of his that you've, like, do you walk through the hallways and sit and you find yourself going back to like one particular piece or anything like that?
I kind of got stuck in the middle of framing the one from Manzanar.
Mm-hmm.
I believe it's Mount Williamson, if I have the correct mountain.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because of the way he shot it, the angle of it. So he was there taking pictures of Manzanar's camp. And basically it's the view from the camp. So what you see from the camp.
Oh, yeah, the one from
yeah.
the internment camp, yes.
And so you are basically on eye level with the rocks. And
Wow.
it's such a different perspective because you're on eye level with the boulders that are in front, and then it kind of goes up into the mountains. And it's a beautiful piece, and it was so striking, unframed, as well as it is framed.
So jealous.
So like, and I say that, and it probably changes every week, honestly, what my favorite is.
Mm-hmm.
And like, it would take me sometimes a little longer than it probably should framing them because I would get stuck. Like, you're just kind of sitting there and you're like, and I've been here for 5 minutes staring at this. I need to get a move on. Okay, let's go.
I would never get any work done if I
It's
was
really
if I was you. Yeah.
Really hard sometimes to focus. Even, and all of our artists are wonderful. And even when I frame some of the other pieces, I'm like, and I need to move on because I can't just sit here and stare at some of these wonderful pieces. So.
Very cool. That's awesome. That'd be another, just thinking of that piece, which is that's always struck me too. And especially after reading his autobiography, which again, I think everybody should read. It's just a fantastic book.
Sure.
Talking about his experience going and documenting the Japanese internment camps during World War II. Like, actually, it adds a whole nother level to it when you realize, no, that image was taken him just looking out from an internment camp. And this is a part of American history, and this is a part of something that we have to reconcile and deal with and shouldn't be forgotten. And he was very eloquent about expressing that in his own words and how much it stuck with him too. So that's just a slight aside, but it's just, there's so much impact and so much worth in even like hearing about the process from an artist when they made those images.
That's awesome. Well, we're going to move on to other artists, but for Ansel Adams, the Masterworks, again, till November 5th. So if you live in Atlanta or if you're visiting in Atlanta up until November 5th, please, please, please stop by the Booth Museum. It's only a 45-minute drive without traffic to Cartersville, and I highly recommend any photographer, any person that appreciates photography has to go see it.
And not to mention, there's places like Four-Way Lunch right down the street from the Booth Museum.
Yes, we do have very good food in downtown Cartersville. So walking distance, and the cafe actually in the museum,
Which I've never eaten that, but
Yeah.
I always end up going to like those old little diners and getting like the chili burger specials and things.
Yeah, but I also recommend, if you need a quick bite, the cafe in the museum is also a good place to just actually grab a bite to eat. So
Very cool. So we're going to jump into Zoë Urness. We have another, her exhibition, her first debut exhibition that's coming up, Keeping the Traditions Alive. So this one's starting November 16th, and it runs until May 27th, 2018. That's a good run.
Yes.
So that's impressive. So tell me a little bit about Zoë. I did some reading, but, I'll put the curator on the spot.
So I'm just fangirling, honestly, over Zoë Urness. She's an amazing photographer, standing alone from her background. Her background just kind of, I think, adds to it a little bit. She's a Tlingit Native American, and she's also quite young. She's 33, like I said. And to have kind of the following that she does and kind of what her career has taken and where she's gone with it, I think just kind of speaks to where photography is going and kind of where it has been. So a fun fact, if you Google her, which I highly recommend, Googling Zoe, you will see some Curtis style or Curtis-esque photographs. She doesn't necessarily, she's not emulating Edward Curtis, but she does have a lot of the similar style, and she'll tell you that these images are actually shot on 120 millimeter. So she's switching out film; they're not digital, and they're beautiful, just images of basically Native individuals in traditional regalia telling their stories. So that's something that is very important to her, is kind of telling the people in the actual image's story and kind of their culture and things like that through these images. And something else that she also does, so her color photography is a digital kind of, and she's most known for an image done at Standing Rock, which was up for a Pulitzer. I don't believe it won, but it was up for a Pulitzer. So just, again, she's in her early 30s and has already, that's already been up for one.
So for some of the viewers that are not really attuned to Standing Rock, what's some of the significance of Standing Rock that she was up for a Pulitzer on it? So
she basically kind of heard about Standing Rock, and hopefully, she'll be able to say a little bit more when she comes in November. I hope to get a little, more clarity on this, because again, what I know is kind of what I've read in brief conversations with her. So she heard about the Standing Rock kind of situation that was up in North Dakota, and she felt like she needed to go. And she and a friend hopped in a car and drove from New Mexico to Standing Rock, North Dakota. And she just was up there just taking pictures and documenting kind of what was going on. And she just happened to turn around, and there was that image, and it was an image of veterans kind of marching in unison with Native people to kind of stand together against, kind of what they were protesting. So it's just a striking image and it's kind of an all white background. I highly recommend, people Googling it. It'll definitely come up when you Google who she is. And just looking at it, it's a very striking image. The colors that are in it, it's got an all white kind of background because it's snowing.
Yeah.
And it's honestly just, and she said, I kind of had a, kind of an existential crisis afterwards, where she's like, I don't know who I am anymore after I've done this. Like, can I go back to my kind of keeping the traditions alive series that I was doing? Like, am I going to be able to go back to that?
Versus like the kind of photojournalist moment of that image.
Yeah. And she's like, I have reconciled myself to kind of continuing the work I started with the keeping traditions alive kind of segment that she was doing. But yeah, so it's kind of interesting, just her whole series and just what she's already photographed at such a young age. I can't wait to see where she goes.
That's awesome. Yeah, I really love the sepia tones. Like, I'm not very big, because I think a lot of I don't want to put down other photographers, but a lot of photographers.
I'll do it for you, Bill. It became a really bad trend, especially 10 years ago or so, to just throw a sepia tone filter on something in Photoshop or Lightroom.
Thank you.
And to just make it kind of like muddy, not really true sepia tone, but just kind of a crappy brown in an image instead of a nice, rich, contrasty black and white or anything. And it's a fad that is thankfully gone by the wayside. There's been other bad fads that have replaced it, but versus an actual true, like doing sepia tone work in the darkroom, taking a silver gelatin print and actually using sepia toning on it can produce some just breathtaking effects.
Yeah. And I mean, her work, I was like, thank goodness there's actually hope for sepia work that's like current day, because I was just so distraught. Like, oh my gosh, you don't know why you're using it. You're just like, oh, that looks nice. All right,
or just Instagram got like a vintage effect to it or something.
Exactly.
Yeah. Actually, an interesting aside, majority of Ansel Adams prints are slightly toned. He actually used something called selenium toner. which actually, like, depending how much you used it, he used it to give it an added archival aspect to the images.
Okay.
But it was actually, depending how you use it, it can give you a much cooler tone. It can make a lot of the blacks actually start to turn towards blue. So
Really?
that's just, it's nerdery on my side there, but
It all goes back to Ansel Adams.
it does.
What
It
we're gonna
really
conclude.
does.
Yeah.
At least like when it comes to me.
Yeah. But I got past the color tones and everything, and I was like, wow, these are actually very impactful, especially for me when I went through the Midwest. Like I did my little road trip through it, and actually seeing Crazy Horse, and just seeing the impact that Native American culture has over there, and then to come back, I really have a much deeper appreciation for that culture, and to see this work and everything, I was like, wow, this is very powerful imagery, and I'm really excited to see her work come into the booth. This is going to be really fun. So you said the piece that she was up for a Pulitzer, Google search, what's the name of it again?
So it's December 5th, 2016. A lot has happened in the past year.
I mean, even if you just Google Zoë Urness and Standing Rock,
It will definitely come up. It'll definitely be the image that you see. And even if you just Google her name, it's
Yeah,
one of the
it
ones
will
that
come up.
pops up under Google image. So, yeah.
And if anybody is not familiar with her or even looking how to say or spell Zoë Urness, that is Zoe. And there's an umlaut above the E, but if you just type in...
Is that what it's called?
That's an umlaut, yeah.
Yes, that's an image.
See, I told you, I'm horrible at language arts.
Dude, I just know-
I'm just really shocked you didn't say Zed.
Yeah.
Zed.
Zoe.
I've been in the States long enough now. I've been kind of appropriate. I also call washrooms restrooms, but
Yeah.
So, but anyway, so Zed or Zoe, and then Urness is Urness. So not exactly how it would phonetically sound, but that's
Urness.
yeah. Urness. So definitely Google her and check out her work.
Very cool. So again, that's reception is going to be on November 16th.
Yes.
So members of the Booth Museum will actually be able to go in. Actually, is she coming on at the opening of the
Yes.
exhibition?
So she will be doing a gallery walk at 4:30 with myself. So
cool.
we'll be going through the gallery and talking about different pieces. We'll be doing a members reception following that in our sculpture court. So another chance just to kind of talk to her a little more laid back. And then we'll end the evening with a lecture. She's going to be giving a presentation kind of, as of now, it's demonstrating how she kind of leads up to a final shot. So she also documents her photo shoots. So she takes a
cool.
lot of in-between pictures of people putting their regalia on and things like that and actually getting into place and then kind of showing you the final image. So she'll be there and she'll be taking questions and things like that. And she's also agreed to go talk to some of our local high school students as well.
Oh, cool.
That's awesome.
So they're getting a wonderful experience getting to kind of pick her brain as well. So again, we like to bring in artists and we kind of try to, like I said, our education department is amazing and they're, they have this program with our local schools. And so
That's awesome because I know being, in that area, like I went to high school north of Atlanta. And so the Etowah Mounds are like their native burial mounds are right there. That becomes like this, that's a good field trip to go see some history. And then moving on and you just forget about the fact that there's so much native history right here in Georgia.
or that New Echota is literally a 30-minute, 20-minute drive up the road from Cartersville. So, the capital of the Cherokee kind of nation is in Northwest Georgia. And it's something you can go to. It's very easy. That is something I think we all we know about, but it's like in the back of your mind and you forget that it's so close.
Right.
So that's fantastic. And I love the fact that you guys are bringing this, even though, again, it's Western art, but it's just, I don't know, it's kind of under this auspice of that is a really great excuse to bring attention to themes of the First Peoples and Native Americans in the art and by Native artists and everything too. So I just love that aspect that it's being kind of, I would say, again, it's just a spotlight is being shown onto it by the Booth Museum.
And her kind of focus is on, again, Native it's Native people's tradition, so it's not just Western nations.
Right.
So it is. I'm kind of hoping maybe she might get a little bit inspired when she's here, and we might get one or two Cherokee shots or Creek or something from when she's out here. But don't quote me on that. I'm not 100% sure if she's going to do anything. But one can always hope that something might come out of it. She might get some sort of creative spark while being out here.
Yes.
Awesome.
So those receptions, that event you said on the 16th, is that all exclusive to members of the Booth Museum, or?
Yes. So that one is going to be a members only. It is a Thursday night. We are open late on Thursday nights, every Thursday at the booth. So I do highly recommend becoming a member.
How do you become a member of the Booth Museum?
So you can. There is more information on our website, which we will give you a lot more information about that later on in the podcast. Yep. You can join when you come to the booth. So say you come, you check out Ansel Adams, and you fall in love, which, as you should, it's a wonderful, wonderful museum. You fall in love with the Booth Museum. You can go down to what we call our circle desk. It's a giant circle, so makes pretty much sense. And you can ask one of the lovely individuals who is working there, and they will actually take your admission and apply it to a membership. So you're not gonna lose out.
Oh, okay,
Nice.
cool.
So if you want to check out the place first before you fully commit, we're here for you. It's good for a year. There is options for, say, you can do an individual membership. You can do you and a spouse.
Oh, cool.
There's a grandparent option.
Nice.
So my parents have that, and they take my niece and nephew all the time. And these not only get you into the Booth Western Art Museum, but they'll also get you into Tellus, and there's an option to get you into Tellus and into Bartow History. So you can buy the option that gets you into all three, which I highly recommend because all three are amazing museums. They all do wonderful events throughout the year. So I highly recommend becoming a member. It goes to a good cause, and we'll continue bringing you great things with those memberships.
Fantastic.
Awesome. Well, we're going to jump into the next one. This one's going to be a little bit later on, but I wanted to go ahead and talk about it because I'm such a Richard Avedon nerd. Like, just when I went and saw Richard Avedon at the High Museum, I totally nerded out, even though it was just a few images. His style of photography and the emotion that he puts behind making the image is what really draws me to Avedon. And when we first had our first sit down, I don't know if you were like really expecting me to know who Laura Wilson was or not, because you're like, oh, do you know who Laura Wilson is? I was like, oh, she assisted for Richard Avedon.
Yeah.
You kind of look like,
I was like, oh, okay, you do know. Yeah.
So, I'm really excited. So she's going to be coming in January 20th, 2018. She'll be there up until April 29th, 2018. And the name of this exhibition is called That Day. And if I remember correctly, this is based off the book, correctly, that she put out, That Day?
Well,
Or there's samples from it.
It's kind of it's not really based off the book, but the images that you'll be able to see in the exhibit are from the book.
Okay, yeah, that's what. Yeah.
And sort of the theme that happened with the That Day collection. And this kind of collection of photographs, she basically gives you the image and then kind of describes you what happened that day. So she gives you kind of a longer description. It's not just the title. It's not just the date. It's not just the medium. It's, okay, this is what was happening during this picture. This is kind of why. There's a lot of why I took this picture or why this picture made the cut.
Right.
Yeah, like every image in the book. We've got the book That Day right here in front of us.
Yeah, there's you probably hear the pages turning in here. I'll make sure that I will add the link to this book that she has up on from Amazon that's linked directly from her website. I'll admit I did not buy this book right away because I did see that the suggested books right next to it was Behind the Scenes with Richard Avedon. I was like, which one to buy? And I was like, okay, I'm sorry, I'm going to buy this one, but this is next on this.
Well, but even, Bill's disclaimer aside, and all of the images here, which are actually just really timely that there's a picture of Sam Shepard right here, and he just passed away earlier this year. Mm-hmm. But every image has the date of that day on it, which I just, even hearing you talk about that. So it seems very purposeful that she was, as far as was she like making in this collection of images, knowing that she was going to kind of catalog each one of these days, or is that just how she works?
You know, I'm not 100% sure on that. Like, I can't give you a definitive answer, so I don't want to say something and misquote.
Right.
But you know, from my experience, artists usually don't necessarily. They'll have one shot that they go in to kind of get there, like, I have this in my mind, and they wind up coming out with 20 or 30 shots, you know, along the way of getting that one.
Sure.
And sometimes the one that you initially wanted is the one you keep, and sometimes you find something better along the way. And so I think it's kind of that, you know, and it's a really good, like I said before, it's a really good documentation of collective memory. Strangely enough, you can't see the image, I'll describe it to you, but that is actually one of my favorite images of her. It's a strange image. It's a bunch of coyotes actually strung up in a tree, which sounds strange, but it's an extremely striking just image.
Are you a cat lover?
Not really.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. No, so
all my library friends are like in uproar now about that.
No, well,
Yeah.
it's a very evocative image.
Yeah,
as far as the fact that you have just dead animals being hung up from a tree.
Yeah, so this one's called Mesquite Tree. And I guess what I find it very interesting, I guess, is more of a culture shock for us because we're not familiar for this, and that and I haven't read the story behind it, but I'm sure there's a legitimate reason for why she took this picture, and that it's kind of like an everyday thing. I guess I don't know if they're drying out the
and
the
coyotes
fur or
are
something
such
like
a kind of a prevalent part, you know, in even Northwest Georgia. I mean, you know, I walk outside my house sometimes and I'm like, oh, look, the coyotes. Okay.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I go back inside. But they can be quite sneaky little devils. So,
we're laughing here because I was flipping through the pages.
The next page over
The next page, yeah, I turned it straight to Richard Avedon. I'm sorry. I'm trying to make this about Laura Wilson. I need to stop nerding out. So turn the page, please. So I'm sorry.
But it's an excellent collection of just work. And again, I think it shows kind of a great collective memory of kind of the American West, the Texas kind of area that she particularly worked in, just from that time period, just the different types of people. It goes from, you know, there are rodeo images to football images to First Communions to cotillions to strange images of coyotes hanging in trees, which is, again, still one of my favorite images. I tend to like images that make you feel something, whether it makes you feel happy or even slightly uncomfortable. Like, I want you to feel something when you walk away. I don't necessarily like kind of the straightforward images. Again, it's got to invoke something in you.
Sure, yeah.
That's kind of what I do when I choose things, because, you know, I'll tell people, I'm like, they're like, oh, do you like it? And I'm like, yeah, might be a little boring, you know. I'll tell you, so you might not want to ask me.
The one that I found really interesting, I don't know if are you going to have this piece there or not?
Yes, we should have that. It's actually in the book.
Oh, is it? Okay.
It's in the book.
So the first piece that I saw of Laura Wilson's was it was a boy standing on top of a white spotted horse. And I was like, that is such a weird photo, but I was so drawn by it. And then that was like my first introduction to Laura Wilson. I was like, this is intriguing. And then I just started diving in, and it really is a great collection of what life in the Midwest is like. I mean, you got a guy, I think he's...
Oh, wow. That's such a strange image for being taken in 1993. Like,
Yeah.
I would have thought that was like somebody like Diane Arbus would have taken that picture.
Yeah.
Or, you know, that's really cool.
We might need to link that image just so people are able
absolutely.
to see it, because it really is a striking image. It's one of the marketing image, you know, one of the images we get to use to kind of help with marketing. So you most likely will see it again, coming from the booth, because it is just one of the. It's a beautiful image.
Yeah.
It really is,
and it's also weird.
And it's weird.
Yeah,
and it is.
You know, so this one's called the Hutterite Boy on Appaloosa, Golden Valley Colony, shot June 15th, 1993. You know, it's kind of interesting because I feel like the image is balanced out very nicely, but the horizon's not straight.
Yeah.
You know, so it's kind of interesting. I mean, it's like, it feels weird at first, and then it just, I don't know, there's something that it breaks the rule of like, oh my gosh, you got to keep your horizon straight and everything. But I find it really neat. I don't know, there's like a sense of balance to it that it's satisfying.
And that unbalance, because, you know, the boy is balancing on a horse, and then you have the unbalance of the image, and it's just, she's probably doing intimacy with your head. I'll have to ask her that in January.
And even the horse is looking at you like, what's so weird about this?
There's a small boy standing on my back. It's fine. Every day.
Again, another, living, working artist who's coming into the booth, and said she is going to be at the opening reception in January.
She is. So she will be there. She will be doing, again, a gallery walk, kind of going through these images.
Again, another good reason to become a member at the booth.
Another great reason. And again, she will also be doing, I'm not 100% sure if it will be a lecture, or sometimes we like to do question answers. Just, we have a moderator kind of leads the sort of interview conversation, and then we open it up to the audience. I'm not 100% sure. I believe it's a lecture, but I don't want to misdirect anybody.
Right.
So,
an interesting fun fact that some people will say, okay, well, what's so interesting about Laura Wilson? But her photography is just amazing. But she is also the mother to Luke, Owen, and Andrew Wilson. So the artists, or not the artists, the actors and director that of so many movies that we've come to love, and to see that all that kind of like intertwined together is such a really cool to see how the family is so in touch with the arts. So that's just a fun little fact that I wanted to bring, that everybody should know, is that, we have a chance to actually see some amazing art that she worked with such a prominent photographer. And then after the fact, after Richard Avedon passed away, that she has built this amount of work for herself to say, I'm Laura Wilson, I'm a photographer, not the person that worked under Richard Avedon. And I,
or not just Luke and Owen Wilson's mom.
Exactly. And I mean, I'm looking at this work, and it's so interesting. It's like there's so much. I just turned to it again. Okay, another page. Like, all right, so there's one in here of like here you go. This one's so interesting. It's a high school football game, right? But there's so much going on with this image that you would look at it and go, oh, it's just a regular picture of somebody at a high school football game. But I mean, it's just, there's so much going on in the image. And I mean, it's just her selection of the work that she wants to portray out here is really awesome. And I'm now kind of kicking myself that I did not get this book, but I will get it next. So,
and again, it's a collection of stories. I think that's also something really important, is that, photography as a medium has kind of also for a lot of times been about documentation.
For sure. Yeah.
Right.
That's one of its main kind of original sort of purposes, was to document things. And I think, she takes that and she is documenting a time and a collective memory, but in a fine art sort of way. Same with, Ansel Adams, what he strove to do when he kind of tried to elevate, and it succeeded in elevating photography into a fine art medium. And that's something I always tell to my high school students who come in to tour our photography exhibits is, photography as a medium is relatively young. Okay, it's 150, 160 years old, give or take. And they're like, they look at you and they're like, that's not young, that's old. And I'm like, well, okay, how long has painting been around? And they're like, oh.
How long has sculpture been around?
How has sculpture been around? Yeah. How long has any of this? And they're like, oh, got it. So, I think, when I tell them that, it's still so young, and that's why it's in the modern wing. That's why it's, it had to kind of fight a little bit when you're the new kid on the block to kind of get that respect. And I think our artists that we currently have up, pretty much, they're very good at proving, yes, it is a fine art medium, whether or not they're documenting everyday life or, are taking a fine art photograph. It's all fine art.
Yeah.
It's all art. That's another thing that I have a problem with, where artists or photographers don't think of themselves as artists. And I'm like, you're an artist.
Yeah.
you're not just a photographer. So like keep that in mind. And, you know, that's also something really funny. They're like, oh, I'm a photographer. I'm like, and you're an artist. So just remember that you're also an artist.
That's awesome. Well, I'll be sure to post links for the images and the books that we've referenced in here. Laura Wilson, That Day, January 20th, 2018 to April 29th, 2018. And her opening reception is January 20th, but you have to be a member to actually go to that reception. So I'm told you've like convinced me. I'm so going to sign up for this. So, but there's actually more than one way that you can actually become a member. There's actually some kind of benefits for photographers. It is the Booth Museum Photography Guild. So I found this kind of interesting. What? Tell me a little bit more about this photography guild.
So the Photography Guild was actually started a couple of years after the foundation of the booth, and some members who were interested in photography kind of went to our director and they were like, okay, so we want to create this guild, and our purpose of the guild is to educate. We don't want to be a club. We want to set ourselves apart from kind of the photography clubs that are throughout, you know, Atlanta and North Georgia. And so they're like, we mainly want to focus on kind of education, and we don't want to have our members compete. Now, the only kind of sort of competition they have is that their yearly exhibition, which is currently on display down in our Borderlands gallery, is judged is a competition. There are winners. People are selected for that. But other than that, it's mostly about education and bringing different photographers in to teach kind of their style and what they do and explain kind of what they do and how they do it. They do special interest groups throughout the month. They do shootouts and, you know, different events throughout the month. So there's a lot of different things going on within the Photography Guild for people to join in. They mostly meet on the second Saturday of every month from 10 to noon, and they break for lunch, and then they usually come back in the afternoon and have some sort of workshop or study session kind of in the afternoon. And it could be a coffee and critique. It could be, like I said, an artist coming in and discussing, you know, kind of what they do. So
very cool. I didn't know much about this, and then up until earlier this year when I went up for the Ansel Adams gallery, and I didn't realize that they actually have all of these different lessons and everything like that. And I'm sure it's so much more than this is your aperture, this is your ISO, this is how to operate your camera. It's way deeper than that.
It is. We kind of joke that sometimes they forget some people are beginners, because sometimes some of the events that they do are very in depth, and some of the lectures are very, very in depth for experienced photographers. That's not to say somebody who is beginning can't join and learn and find things out, but
total immersion is really, I think it's a great form of learning, because it's like you go in there and you're so overwhelmed, going, "Oh my God, what is going on?" It's kind of like being thrown into like a Russian class, you know, going, what is going on here? But you know, your like focus is like turned up even more.
I remember more Spanish from like a week in Costa Rica than 2 years of high school French. So that's
immersion. Yes.
Immersion. There's a lot to be said for immersion.
Yeah,
for sure.
So that's really cool. And so by becoming a member with the Photography Guild, you actually become a member with the museum as well, correct?
Correct. Now, that is an individual membership. So if you have a spouse and they do not join, that does not get them in. So I do want to clarify that is an individual membership. So you would have to buy a membership for your spouse.
Okay, fair enough. So they have their own website. It is linked on the Booth Museum's website, but they have their own website where if you're looking for more information as far as who to contact, where you can meet, when their events are, it is boothphotographyguild.org. I cannot spell based on last week's episode.
So that would be BOOTH, booth, just in case anybody is wondering how do you spell, you know, there's no E or anything like that. And so boothphotographyguild.org.
Yep. So,
and if you're searching for anything about the Booth Museum, again, just, you know, BOOTH.
Yes. So photography is not the only thing that the booth is known for. I mean, they have several other mediums of art over there. They have paintings, sculptures, the pop culture. Sorry, Steven, you're going to shudder here, but they do have Andy Warhol over there. So I'm going to geek out a little bit. The Buffalo Nickel over there. So what are some of the other of your favorite pieces over there that are not photography there that you think everybody should see?
So we do have a very kind of iconic and very large Maynard Dixon painting that you might have seen if you had gone to the High a couple of months back. They did borrow it for a short period of time. So it's a beautiful piece. I highly recommend it. Our sculpture court, we have a wonderful sculpture called Eagle Catcher, and it's quite large and it's breathtaking, of a young Native American male catching an eagle. And I can go into way more detail about why and how and what this means. And I can direct you to some people who can also tell you way more about it than you probably ever want to know. But it's a striking piece of sculpture. We also have a wonderful exhibit going on right now called Sweet Tea, and it's Sweet Tea 5, and it's Western American art owned, what we dub south of the Sweet Tea line. So it's basically Western art owned in the American South.
Interesting.
So most of it is from private collectors, a couple of other museums. So the High graciously allowed me to borrow some photographs.
Oh, cool.
So I have an Imogen Cunningham and an Edward Muybridge and a William Henry Jackson.
Nice.
And Greg Harris and I totally geeked out over the Edward Muybridges.
Yeah, I was going to say, you've got a Muybridge. That's fantastic.
Yeah, he and I were both just standing there, just like going through like this entire portfolio and just geeking out. And the director of curatorial services was just like standing next to us, laughing hysterically at how much we were geeking out over the Edward Muybridges. Because he recently has started his position at the High, and I don't think it had the chance to fully appreciate, get through the collection and appreciate what the High has to offer. Along with Frank Hunter, who is a living photographer who used to be in Atlanta but has since returned out west, and he gave us a collection of platinum prints.
Oh,
so
wow.
not too many people printing platinum anymore, but that made me very happy because they're very stable. You can't.
Yeah.
It takes a lot to hurt a platinum print.
Well, there's also just the tonal range that other like silver gelatin even doesn't have compared to platinum or palladium.
They're
prints.
beautiful.
Yeah.
They're just utterly breathtaking, and thankfully they're in our permanent collection. So
Nice.
more of them will be seen as we continue to grow and establish our permanent collection. But there are several pieces in the Sweet Tea collection that it kind of goes sort of in a timeline. So you have your more historic pieces, of the Native Americans, cowboy kind of thing. And there are several images of animals, but then it moves kind of into the modern and more sort of folk art that you don't necessarily see in too many places. So it's a wonderful just array of works. And that's open through December 31st. So I highly recommend everybody kind of going in and just seeing the collection there. Like I said, the Edward Muybridge is front and center.
Nice.
Front and center of that, because you can't turn it down. But highly recommend everybody just going and walking through that gallery if you happen to be up there.
Very cool. I will definitely check that out.
Well, there's one last piece that I wanted to touch on because there is a little bit of a photography tidbit. The Carolyn and James Miller Presidential Gallery. This is actually really neat because it's not Midwest related or anything, but it is you have a letter or some kind of piece of written document from every single president, even all the way up to, Donald Trump. Tell me a little bit about that. I mean, just every single president. That's amazing. So
we do have, in some ways, you can say the official portrait, but that doesn't, they didn't exactly do official portraits in the earlier days. So we have an image of every president in chronological order, and all but one is the original letter. So you're looking at the George Washington letter that is the George Washington letter.
Wow.
So it's the Adams letter is currently rusting. So it got a little too much light, and so it's currently rusting so that it does not get further damage. So I will admit, there is a replica for that one, but it does say that it is a replica. So we're not trying to fool you. We're going to tell you it's a replica for that one, because we don't want that historic artifact to get damaged.
Sure.
And we give you a little kind of fun facts about each president, first to be photographed, first to, have a bathtub in the White House, different things like that. Just some fun facts for each president.
That's cool.
And, part of it, again, is for education. Several of the presidents were from out west, or they, bought the West. Thank you, Thomas Jefferson. Bought a portion of the Midwest, that tiny little Louisiana Purchase. And, they play an important part to kind of America's story. And that's something that we also try to do at the booth. We try to tell America's story. And a big part of that is the American West.
Sure, for sure, yeah.
And so, those presidents just mean, it means a lot. And that's one of the reasons we were able to have the JFK exhibit, is because of that photography gallery. That's why we had it. So I think, that's part of it. It's, again, just telling America's story, and the presidents are a big part of that.
Very cool. And what's really interesting is a lot of those modern day presidents were shot by Joseph Karsh. So I really want to do an episode just on Karsh, because there are so many iconic images that Karsh has shot that I've gone through history, in high school and middle school, flipping through and going, oh, that's Ernest Hemingway. And then now that I'm really into photography and everything, it's like, oh my gosh, that was the picture that I was looking at in my language arts class that I was totally bombing at the time, So, he's shot Winston Churchill. And the story behind the Winston Churchill is such a classic. I won't divulge in too much to that, but please read it because it is hilarious. But Karsh shot Truman, with the exception of Roosevelt, and up to Clinton, correct?
Yes, it's Hoover through Clinton, with the exception of Roosevelt.
Hoover, okay, that's right. Okay, wow.
So,
and Clinton wasn't, in the grand scheme of things, it was not that long ago. That's, well, for some people, they weren't even alive yet. Oh my gosh, I feel so old. Anyway, so, but that's amazing. So you even get a really cool little fun photography factoid going through that as well.
Yeah, you do. And, while Karsh was still alive when W was elected, he died a year later.
Right.
So, because I have people who are like, oh, well, why didn't he take the image? And I'm like, well, clearly, he probably wasn't in good health at the time.
Yeah,
when you think about it, like, he did pass away a year after, second Bush was elected.
Right.
So that's a question I probably get asked a lot about those. And then another fun fact, so far since we've opened, the presiding president has actually written us a letter. So the 2 letters from Bush and Obama are actually to the Booth Western Art Museum.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
that's awesome.
Mr. President, if you're listening to this, you want to send us a letter, if you somehow stumble upon this and want to send us a letter, we'll greatly appreciate it.
So, all right. So, Mary Margaret, thank you so much for coming on. It's so fun to send out the emails and see who actually replies. And I was so excited that the Booth Museum wanted to come onto the air and talk about such great work. It even speaks out to how great the organization is to come out. We're still growing. We still have, some, a couple thousand downloads. Yeah. But in the grand scheme of how huge everybody is, we're just growing. And for you guys to take your time to come out here and talk to us is absolutely awesome. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Seriously. Is there anything else that you would like to plug or promote or, make sure that that people know about before we all get to actually go home and go to sleep?
Well, we've started jokingly kind of in some of our talks calling 2018 the year of photography at the Booth Western Art Museum. So not only do we have the kind of exhibits we talked about, Zoë Urness and Laura Wilson, we also have at least two, on the top of my head, we have two other photography exhibits after that, and the Booth Photography Guild exhibit again the following August. So 3. So there will be 5 within the course of 2018. There will be 5 photography exhibits at the Booth Western Art Museum.
That's huge.
Oh, wait. Nope, 6. Sorry, I did forget one. There we go. I knew I had 3 big ones, and then the BPG exhibit. So it's the year of photography at the Booth Western Art Museum, and we hope you guys come out and just check us out.
Absolutely. Well, it's funny because I was going to invite you back. Well, I'm definitely going to invite you back. I'm definitely going to invite you back because those other exhibitions are on the website. So if you really, really want to spoil yourself, go ahead, go to the website and check it out.
That is boothmuseum.org.
Bingo.
Or facebook.com/boothmuseum.
Oh, yes,
Very
definitely. Check out our Facebook.
Yeah,
like I said,
your guys' Facebook page is fantastic.
Yeah, our director of marketing, Tom Chanel, is excellent at, again, responding to people's comments and questions and concerns.
It's very proactive, too. If you like the Booth Museum, you will find out, like, I don't have to worry about missing the end of the Ansel Adams exhibit because I'm going to know, like, you're really good about, like, a week or a month in advance.
You'll probably get reminded, like, the week before and then like the day before, and then like we even have a billboard for this exhibit in Cartersville. So
I've seen it.
Nice.
I kind of like geeked. I was like, I have a billboard. You know that moment where you're just like,
there's a Booth Museum billboard on 10th Street in Midtown too.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So go check out our billboards too. So.
They're mighty fine.
On the way to the Booth Museum.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you can't miss it. 75 northbound. You'll hit Cartersville and you'll start seeing the signs for it. So, so we're gonna close it up. Studio C41 is growing. It first started off as a fun little thing that we wanted to get together and just talk about photography stuff. But it is actually growing into something much more than that. And I really want to focus on that. So we do have a Facebook page, facebook.com/studio.c41.onair. And I am working on a webpage where we will be taking news, the film news. I mean, Bellamy Hunt said it himself. 2018 is going to be a big year for film, and I think this is going to be a great opportunity for us to build the followers, and actually be able to publish out when Kodak is officially going to put out Ektachrome, and when we get JCH 400 and 120. Brent, if you're listening to it, you still owe us.
Dude,
so.
I've got the Polaroid Originals 1 Step 2. I've already got my pre-order in for it, so I should have that by the 16th. I want to say, so we can do a little review for that camera.
Yeah, man. So please, guys, we are trying to build this. I'm taking this very seriously.
He's wringing his hands with great gusto and everything at the moment. So if you guys just can't appreciate like how much vigor Bill is putting into this little promotion.
Yes. So please comment. If you have any questions for Mary Margaret, please post it onto the page. I'll pass it over to Mary Margaret. She's more than happy to answer any questions on it.
Mary Margaret, how do you feel about people recommending photographers for you to check out? Are you tired of people saying, "Oh, have you looked at this guy?" Or are you...
not so much tired. I mean, I always welcome anybody's input. I don't want to discourage anything because who am I to say I know, what's out there. It's always great for people to be like, hey, have you checked this person out? Just don't think that it's a guarantee. That's the other thing. People think it's a guarantee, or I do have to say, it is picturing America. So I have had some people again who have offered, some European stuff and some African stuff. And while that's great, doesn't fall within our realm of kind of collection and exposition. Exhibition, not exposition. That's what I've been doing all night. So definitely send us some of your ideas. Just we do it again, tend to stick towards the Americas. So
Cool.
Great. Well, and like Bill said, send us ideas too. Facebook's always a great place. Instagram, we're on there too. You can always comment if there's topics you'd like to hear us cover. Guests you could suggest. If you're a guest who wants to get on here, we might consider that too.
Absolutely.
So, but yeah.
All right. Well, guys, please, on iTunes, please, if you have an opportunity to please rate and comment on the show. It helps build the visibility in iTunes. So if you have an opportunity and you're really getting a lot out of this, please, please, please help us out with that. So, but other than that, we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. I know Stephen is ready to go sleepy time, but no.
Yeah, Bill, unlike you, I actually do sleep.
Yes, I know. So again, thank you, Mary Margaret. It's been awesome having you on the show. And
yeah, seriously, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Awesome. All right, guys, we'll have a good one, and we will see you very soon. See ya.